All right, so let's do the same thing in Unreal Engine now. So this is that scene that we were using when we for the texturing tutorial. So I'm just using the same file, but we're going to start a new level, and I'll call this one Lighting Demo. I'll open the new level. Okay, so we start out, we've got nothing here. Um, so the first few things that you want to bring in are going to be skylight and a directional light, which don't show anything yet until you add the sky atmosphere. Um, Actually, I'm going to make sure I'm putting all of these at the 0 point. I'm just going to make a nice little stack of them to keep them all together. We've got our sky. We also want to add an exponential height fog. As you can see, that kind of brings in much more of an environment or like atmosphere, more than the sky atmosphere does, um, weirdly enough. And I'll add clouds. Actually, no, I won't. You can add the like volumetric clouds if you want. I'm not going to add them for this one. Um, but make sure you do not forget your post-process volume. And the size of this box doesn't actually matter because we're going to change it to extend unbound, the infinite extent unbound. So now all of our settings for the post-process volume will apply to the whole scene, not just what's in the box. I just like making it a little box that contains all my lighting things. It's the little things. And then we also want to change our min and max EV100. So they're in the exposure setting, and you want to make sure you change them both to 1. And so this prevents the automatic exposure adjustment that Unreal will do. It makes it so that you have a constant light source across your whole scene. Um, so going through these lights, we'll start with the directional light here, and if you look, you know, all very, very, very similar to how Maya's lighting, like the settings are for the basic ones anyway. Once you get down to the advanced um, stuff and like further down into the rendering and like light shafts, like Unreal can do um, has sort of a lot more settings, but they're all much more advanced stuff. So I'm not going to go into them right now. But feel free to play around with things. If you mess with something and you don't like how it looks, Unreal always gives you this reset to default value. So feel perfectly fine to like mess around with stuff as much as you want, um, and then just reset it to default if things start looking weird. Um, so the directional light is similar to the directional light in Maya. It acts as your kind of your sunlight sort of thing. If you hit Control and L, you you can't have the light selected because that makes sense. Um, and so you can see the arrow on the little light icon here moves in accordance to this. So once you let go of Control and L, it tells you which direction the sunlight is coming from. But when using Control L, up and down, moving your mouse up and down raises and lowers the sun. Moving it left and right, makes it rotate, which you can even just move one direction. Um, so while we're not really going to be using the directional light here, we do have to keep it on for when it comes to our skylight. Um, so the skylight is sort of like the sky dome in Maya. It uses a cube map instead of an HDRI. And so there is a way that you can take one of the HDRIs that we got from Polyhaven or one that you already have and convert it into a cube map. It's quite a convoluted process, um, and we don't really need it for this project as we're not going to be using an HDRI background or anything like that for a prop render. So maybe I'll cover how to do that in another video. Or maybe I'll just leave a link for how to do that in the comments. Yeah, I think I'll do that. It's um, and so we can adjust our intensity. Actually, you know what? I'm going to bring in our model first because play with all these settings all we want. If we don't have a model, we're not going to actually see anything. Oh, and when you're working in Unreal, holding Control and Alt lets you click and drag to select multiple things. And I'm just going to actually move all these up to the sky. So back to our meshes, you can see I've pulled in our prop stage that we had in Maya. Unreal doesn't let you model anything, and so this way I can still use our, to get the same effect for the background that we had on that one. Um, as you can see, Unreal automatically has backface culling enabled. So you don't need to worry about turning on any of those settings, and it'll make things a bit more usable for us. Um, so I re-imported our barrel into the separate pieces just because I want to um, make them all the same, or close the lid. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm not sure if you noticed there, when moving them, instead of entering 0000, I just entered the 0, right-clicked on location and copied, and then I was just pasting in those values each time. So then that puts all of our barrel together. Bring my lid down. And there we go. And let's also bring in a camera. So Cine Camera Actor is what you want to use. And it gives you this nice little, you know, view box here. You can change it so that you're actually using controlling the camera. So if you go up to perspective, and we have Cine Camera Actor here. And so the camera has quite a few different settings. In our detail panel here. So you can change, the film back to, they've got a bunch of different kind of lens, 35 millimeter. I think there's a 70 millimeter IMAX. Yeah. Um, so I'm going to use the 16:9 DSLR. It's pretty standard format. You can change how your zoom works. But one thing that's really useful is the focus method. If you go tracking, it says actor to track. And so we can bring in this. And so now if we had other things in the scene, you'd see that this would be in focus and then the other things would be, kind of out of focus a bit in the back. And you can also, if you go with the, I think it's the draw debug, not the tracking, the focus plane. Oof. There is a way to move that back and forward. I'm just not seeing it right now. I will have to fiddle with that later and let you guys know. Um, but back to our camera. Um, so we've got it, so the actor to track is our barrel, so it'll always be focused on our barrel. Um, and again, there's a lot of different settings, especially, like post-process, like, you know, this is just the one setting, film type, color grading. Um, you can do quite a lot with the cameras in Unreal Engine. I'm gonna not go too deep into that. Changing your focal length and your f-stop and stuff is great for really dialing in kind of that look that you want for cinematic or anything like that. I'm going to, yeah, ignore that debug. That's supposed to let you move the distance of the focus, but I think I'm doing something wrong. It's not something I've used often here, so. Um, but yeah, so change it to tracking and set your object. It's the easiest way to kind of make sure everything is in focus. Um, and so back to the lightings that we were working with. So we saw the directional light, move it all around however we want. But this is creating, it's grabbing the edges of our sphere that we don't want. It's creating some hard shadows and it's really strong. Um, so we don't really want to use the directional light, but without the directional light, you don't really see the skylight. They kind of work in tandem. Um, so I find what I do is I turn the directional light down to 1, just so it's kind of there. Um, and then as I change the skylight, we can change the actual intensity of that ambient light that we were using. Um, if you grab and click and drag, it cranks up really quickly. So you might want to just enter your numbers there. And I'm actually going to say we'll go around 30, I think. Um, I want to switch back to my perspective view. Oh, um, so you have to hit the stop piloting button here. I forgot about that. And then if we select the camera, we can see our little um, preview. And you can hit, there's a little pin down here. So now we've got that pin there. And so if we select something else, we can still see our preview. Sorry about the little hiccup there. The lighting kind of messed with me a bit. Um, so we've got our camera in, that's set up now. Um, into the directional light. So the point light is, very much the same as the one in Maya. Um, you know, uh, I don't know why it's putting my intensity at candelas, you want to use lumens. Um, I just made it a lot brighter so we can kind of see things. And so, sorry, just a second. I'm going to all of this and move it up just a little bit because I was able to see kind of some like world grid material glitching through there, it looked like. I think it was just like the grid itself. There we go. So for our point light, um, yeah, you can adjust your color. We've got a source radius as well as the soft source radius, and so you can see that kind of controls sort of the fall off of the light. And attenuation is kind of how far the light will reach at its, most extreme point. We've got temperature as well. You can adjust the like indirect lighting intensity or the scattering, and there are a whole lot of settings that you can go through. Unreal definitely has more settings for their lights than Maya does. Um, just kind of play with it and figure out what you're comfortable with. Like I was saying, if anything that you do change, you can always hit the reset to default. Um, so I'm not going to use a point light for this. And then we've got spotlight. Um, which, again, I don't know why it doesn't have lumens set to the default. That is strange. Maybe it's just something I've never noticed before. Um, but again, we've got, the intensity, attenuation radius. Um, the spotlight has an inner cone angle as well as an outer. And so, the inner cone kind of lets you define where it's the sharpest. And then the outer cone will, give you more fall off and spread. You can also change your source radius. And so that's, the light's coming from all of this and then going down. So if you do change your source radius, you're probably also going to want to change your cone angles as well to compensate and um, work in tandem with that. Um, and yeah, again, all the same settings. So I'm not going to mess with any of them as we're not actually going to use a spotlight for this. Um, we're going to use the rectangle light, which very similar to our area light in Maya. You don't have the little line that points telling you which direction is going, but you've got the barn door angle and length. And so this inside square is your source size, so it's source width, source height. Um, and then this outer square is the barn door angle, which, let me just point it down a bit so we can see it better, which kind of acts a little bit like your spread in Maya. So the attenuation radius is again like, how far the light spreads. It's not like how far the light shoots, but how far the indirect lighting will bounce and reflect to. Um, but you've got the barn door angle, which kind of acts more like the spread, especially when you couple it with the length. So you can see how it affects that there. I find the area light is probably one of the most useful lights, or that's at least it's the one that I use the most in Unreal here. And this is the light that I am going to use, so I'm just going to adjust it oops, to kind of get the view that we want, or the look that we want on our barrel. A little bit further away. Oh, and I actually do not want it directly in front of the camera. I want it to go from an angle. One thing you'll see is in my little preview, you can see this random hard shadow here. We want to get rid of that. So we're going to pull our length back a bit. Open up our source and then just turn up our brightness a bit. And I'm actually going to lift this up. There we go. So I'm going to say that's good for our lighting. You know, the main lights work very similar. You will see there is an HDRI backdrop, which we can pull in. Um, you know, it does change the lighting on everything. So move my projection center down. We can see that it does change the lighting. Where is my? Actually, I kind of like the effect. That gives a bit better. I'm going to leave it on. Um, but when it comes to the HDRI, there's, um, you know, it's got a mesh shape here, and then you have to add cube maps. Um, so you can't just use, you know, an HDRI. This is the default one that comes with it. So just remember that you can't just bring in an HDRI and drag and drop it here. It doesn't work that way in this one. Um, but there should be a setting for, um, you know, I'm not sure if they have like a camera setting in Unreal now that I'm looking at this. Hmm. Yeah, as I say that, I'm not sure if they actually have a camera setting for their HDRI aside from just like removing this. Oh dear God. Sorry, I've never removed that before. What is that monstrosity? All right, let's bring that back. That was some nightmare stuff there. And we see we still have this lighting needs to be rebuilt, so we're going to do that now. If you go up to top here, there's build, and then we can just build lighting only. And so it just takes a second to just make sure that all your lighting is going to be working properly, not interfering with each other. Ah, okay. So it's telling me I can't use a skylight and a HDRI backdrop. So let's hide our skylight here. Let's just get rid of it. Yes, I like the lighting we're getting from that HDRI backdrop better anyway. select our area light. Let's move it up to say 50, 55. Yeah. All right. So now we've set up our scene. Now what we need to do is add a level sequencer. So actually, I will say, if you go to perspective and then turn on cinematic viewport, this is for the level editor, or sorry, the level sequencer, um, which I was actually wanting to use it for something else. Um, sorry, if we go to our Cine camera, so we're here, um, we can just go up to these little three lines and there's high resolution screenshot. So we actually don't want to hit this just yet because you'll see this one thing here for screen percentage. So if we go custom override and put our screen percentage up to 200, you could see that the detail really popped there a lot more, right? And so now if we go to our high resolution screenshot, um, yeah, we don't need to adjust any of these and we can hit capture. And so it says it's saved. It saves it in the project folder. Why can I not bring you down? Sorry, did not want to change screens there. Um, so it saves it in our project folder, but you'll notice this saved folder doesn't actually show up in our content browser. Um, but that is where we got our screenshot right here. So that's how you're going to take your single still frame screenshots. Additionally, we did this when it was small. So if we hit F11, it makes it full screen. And then we can go up here and take our screenshot from here. And hit F11 again, bring it back down. And then um, there we go. And now it's the full big screen image. So yeah, sorry. Remember to hit F11 before you take a screenshot. Okay, so that's for your single screenshots, but we want to do a turntable. So I'm just going to eject from piloting our camera here. Oops. Make sure we're back on perspective. And I'm just going to turn the screen percentage back down to 100. It just helps with the processing power. Because when we render, it's not going to be reliant on that screen percentage anyway. When we're rendering for the for our video. Now, where did my camera go? Right, that is really weird. It's not. Oh, sorry. I hit G. G is game mode, and it hides all of our little icons. So that's why I couldn't find my camera. Sorry, it's early. I'm still not thinking right. And so now that we've got everything set up for what we want, we're going to have to bring in a level sequencer in order to actually make this into a turntable or render out a video. So this little camera or movie clapper thing up here is your cinematics menu. So we go to that and then we go to add level sequencer. Um, we will change it to I'm going to call it barrel turntable, and we'll just hit save. And so now we get this. Um, so for our content browser, we're actually not going to need this, so I can just push it most of the way to the bottom here. And so your sequencer doesn't do anything unless you add it to the scene. Um, so given that these are all separate, I'm going to group them together. And then this group I'm going to add to the scene. That's going to take a lot more work. Okay, we're going to actually do this in a little bit of a different way. So, because we've got all of our meshes kind of here together or as separate pieces, which is going to create a lot of um, and ungroup that, which it's going to create a hassle for us. So what I'm actually going to do, we're going to create a new actor blueprint. Open this, go to the viewport. I'm going to add, what do we need? 4 meshes. Yes. And I should be naming these, but this is just going to be doing this quick, so I'm not too worried about it. So select our static mesh, then we can go over barrel low copy pattern. Select the next one. And these always drop in at the 0 point, so you won't have to actually change anything as you go, except for this last one. And everything I've brought in here is in a hierarchy, so it's all linked, like parented and childed to each other. Um, but this is good. So we did a blueprint, but we don't actually need to do any blueprinting. We just wanted to get all of our pieces together. So I'm going to remove all those from the scene. Oops. So this one barrel low piece, I forgot we had actually locked to our camera tracking. So I'm just going to go to manual, that removes our tracking. Apparently it still counts as being tracking clear. There we go. And then we're going to bring in barrel exactly where we had it. Let's bring up our camera again, pin our preview just to make sure. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I should have thought ahead when I brought in all those pieces. Okay, so now that we have our, our barrel in here, we can just drag and drop it in here. And we're going to add a track for the transform. And if we hit the arrow on our transform, you see we get location, rotation, and scale. And so right here you have these zeros is where our frame number is. So we're going to go to frame 1. And we're going to create a keyframe using this little circle here. And this is on our barrel, by the way. Um, and then we'll move up. Make sure we change our frames per second to the 24 frames per second film, which actually means we're going to have to adjust our keyframe because it'll change it to a decimal point there, which we don't want. So 1, create a keyframe on the rotation, And then we'll go up, we'll make it the same length as the other one, up to the 96. Create another keyframe on the rotation. And then we're actually going to come down into our rotation. And this is roll pitch, yaw. And change that to 360. So now if we play, actually, you know what? I want that to rotate the other way. Negative 360. And so now if we take a look, we've got our barrel rotating just like it should for our turntable, just like it did in the other one. So we're not quite done here yet. I'm going to select all of our keyframes, which honestly, like the ones for roll and pitch, we can totally delete those. We only need the yaw. Um, everything still works exactly the same. But we also need to add our camera to this scene. So we're just gonna, or to our sequencer. So we're just gonna drag it in. Why does that look so bright? We don't need to adjust the camera, but again, if you did want to adjust, you can hit here to add a track for the transform, and then just using the same method that we did with our barrel, we can move in and around, like, have the camera zoom in and out, do whatever it wants. I'm slightly concerned that these look really washed out, but I guess we'll see how that goes um, after we render out. Um, so now that we've got our camera added and our barrel, which I don't know if you noticed there, it's slowed down at the end of our rotation. So if we just select our keyframes and then right click, and so you see we've got these are our tangents. Our key interpolation would be the same as your tangents in Maya. And so we're actually going to change this to linear. So whereas these auto ones, these cubic ones are kind of like the auto ease and stuff like that. Linear is just going to be a straight line. So we've got um, an even rotation throughout the whole thing. 24 frames a second. All right, and we added our camera. Okay, so now we want to go to Window, Cinematics, Movie Render Queue. Ooh, actually, hold on 2 seconds. I'm going to close that. There is one additional thing that we can do with our post-process volume here. And that is called color grading. And so there's the post-process volume has a ton of different visual effects and camera settings and stuff like that built into it. Um, I could do a whole video just on that, so I'm not going to go into all of them right now. Um, but where is... So when you get down to this color grading section, you can do it all manually and change everything, little bit by little bit and tweak, or you can use a color grading LUT. And so LUTs will change the effect of kind of how all of your colors work. Um, so just as an example, so this is without the LUT applied and this is with it. It's all the same footage, it's just a different color grading applied to it. Um, and LUTs are something that are very commonly used in cinema and actually getting to be more and more common in games. They can completely change the feel So I've already downloaded a few LUTs. If I can get my, oops, if I can get my content browser back out here. There it is. And so you can, just drag and drop and it will, none of these LUTs, this is just a random pack I grabbed, none of these were made for Unreal or for this specific scene. So you can see how they send the colors like way off a lot of the time. Um, what you can do, which, color grading when you're doing a prop turntable is not really, that important. It's not something that you're going to really need to do. But if you're doing a whole scene, an environment, it can make a world of difference. Um, as you see here, some of these colors get like a bit oversaturated. Like I said, this is just a random package that I grabbed. I haven't even tested any of these before. Um, but what you can do is you can take your screenshot, bring it into Photoshop, add a bunch of like tweaks and adjustments for vibrance and color and hue and all that stuff. Um, and then from Photoshop, you can export your new, your new an LUT from there, which I'll leave a link in the comments or in the description of this video for the steps on how to do that. I'm just not going to go through it because it's a fairly lengthy process. Um, so yeah, I'm not using LUTs because we're doing a prop render. If you're doing a full scene, I highly recommend you look into it and give it a try. Um, but now that we are done here, so we're going to go to Window, Cinematics, Movie Render Queue. You're going to hit the plus and add our barrel turntable. So you've got your settings and your output. So the automatic output will be in that same saved folder. Um, it'll be in movie renders. So we're in our, um, in our Unreal Engine project folder, there's that saved folder. And then in there, there's movie renders. And so it'll automatically save to there, um, as you can see there. So, but we've also got our configuration here. And so we have JPEG, which we don't want. So we'll just hit delete and then we'll hit plus on the settings and we'll go to PNG. So that's just your file type when it exports. Leave the deferred rendering alone. That's all the defaults are going to be good. And then for our output, we can change our directory, our the format. So it goes name and then frame number, which honestly I don't know why you'd want anything other than that. Um, we can adjust our resolution and change our frame rate here. Again, the padding is just for like how many zeros are in each frame. Um, don't need an offset, and yeah, so all of these are good. One thing you do want to add that they don't already have here is anti-aliasing. And so like the camera AA setting in the Arnold renderer in Maya, this works very similar to that. It helps reduce noise and it takes kind of extra samples basically. Um, and so in this temporal sample count, we can change that. And so the anti-aliasing in Maya works a bit different in just the way that it represents the numbers. So if you remember, we changed, the samples on our lighting to like 3, for instance. And so how Maya would work is that it would take that number that we entered into our samples, multiply it by itself, and then multiply it by the camera's AA samples in the Arnold renderer settings. So if we had, if we set our samples to 3 for one of our lighting, then by the time it gets to the end, by the time it's all said and done, that's like an anti-aliasing amount of 27. Um, so it kind of works the similar concept, just for this we're leaving just the total number. And so the higher it is, the cleaner and more crisp your images are going to be. 32 and 64 are normally pretty good. Um, You can go up to like 200 and something if you want, like, 256, why not? Um, but it's going to take a lot longer for you to render. So actually, for the sake of time, I'm going to leave this one at 32. But you'll notice with having this anti-aliasing on, it'll make things a lot cleaner and it'll pop a lot better. Um, so you can also save this configuration here as a preset if you want, and then you can use it for other projects. I'm actually not going to bother saving it. It was just one thing I changed. Oh, and override. There we go. Sorry, I forgot about that. And then we hit accept for our settings, so we're all good. Um, and now we're going to hit render local. And oh, my render is popped up on my other screen here. Oh shoot. Um, cancel that. Cancel that because I made a mistake. I didn't. Um, in our frames, we want to use a custom playback range, and we want from frame 1 to 96 because that's all that we put in um, for that. So now we're going to hit render local, and all right, so that's going to just take a few minutes to render. So I will stop the recording and we'll be right back once it's done. All right, so now we're done with our exporting, our rendering. Um, as you can see, we've got same as when we exported with Maya, a whole bunch of different images. So then it's just a matter of bringing them um, into Premiere and making them into our turntable. And so hopefully that covers kind of everything that you need to know for lighting and rendering in both programs. Uh, just remember a lot of the lighting it comes down to how it looks, so you really have to have an eye, take your time, fiddle around with a lot of the different settings. Don't be afraid to readjust your textures as you're setting things up. And by readjust your textures, I mean like the roughness, the normal values, all kinds of stuff like that. Um, and yeah, so I think that should be good. If you have any other questions or things that you'd like me to cover, please, leave a comment. I'll try to respond to everyone, and I'm always happy to, cover more things, make more tutorials if you folks request them. So just let me know. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you. Take care.